Yeah, well, I suppose in sort of general communication, we'll communicate in the company within Slack, but everyone we recruit, especially on the Hungarian side, has a very high standard of English. Most of them have actually spent some time in the UK, either studying or working. So they have some of the small talk nuances, which does help. But to be honest, a lot of the time it's just business chat. Everyone just gets on with it very directly, which I understand that. And I guess there isn't much small talk that goes on the Slack channel at all, actually, come to think of it. But I understand this too, because I'm married to a Lithuanian. Observing conversations between my wife and her parents, for example, can look from a British person's point of view, can look it looks like there's an argument going on, but no, it's just the standard way of communicating.
So you say like it's more expressive, like more emotional, or
More direct.
All right.
A lot more direct, yes. But it's good. It's no ambiguity. You just get on and get it done. And that's actually why we found that it seems to be why we set up the branch in Hungary in the first place, because actually I employed Petra. She was the first employee, but she was working in the UK at the time. We decided during the first lockdown actually to set up this branch because it kind of validated remote working to some degree, or to a greater degree, I should say. And we thought, well, Hungary people seem to have the right mindset, the right kind of data-driven, data-centric mindset. So we thought, okay, let's give it a try. And we started recruiting people based on, it did quite a thorough test for them, but also a full training course we put together to get them familiar with aviation data. We looked at their personality types. We only recruited particular Myers-Briggs personality types.
All right. So it's like, do you like based on recruit on based on personality, but you also go with some education or something like that when you recruit?
Do you know, purely just on personality and test results, we look for potential. That's actually a good point on potential as well. So we don't just look for people who are going to be good, what we call data processing clerks, like our entry-level role. We look for people who can progress to other things. You know, we're a growing company. We've got over 30 employees now, so it's become quite a big operation. But we look for, we're always trying to recruit, especially future developers, because data processing people, we found by accident actually, make excellent developers. So we upskill them. We have this with, we have now 7 in our development team, and 5 of those came through the data processing team. So Lukasz as well. It was the first test case for this. So yeah, it serves as an excellent funnel into other roles. Sometimes we recruit people who are more extroverted, have a more extroverted trait. So then we look at sales and customer support. We've just moved actually one of the data processors who's more extroverted to the sales support role. So yeah, and I love this. I love that we can actually bring people in and sort of reward them for their loyalty and their hard work, and bring them up with us. As the company grows, they get pushed up from below. That's the way I wanted it to be.
But let's start at the beginning. Like, where did you start it?
So right at the beginning, or just with ADS?
I mean, let's start from the studies. Yeah.
Well, so studies. I was more of a student of the University of Life. I was not really one for formal education. It didn't agree with me that much, but I did what I needed to do. I went to, well, obviously high school and then college, because I wanted to get the right qualifications to join the Air Force as a pilot. That was my aim growing up, my goal. I came from a family of well, 2nd generation Air Force, Royal Air Force. So, okay, this is what I want to do.
So you got like a Spitfire in your blood, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. One of my grandfathers used to be an engineer working on them, so yes, yeah, just to look after.
All right.
So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but so that was all my focus. So I did that, and then I ended up working for an aircraft for a helicopter charter company to start with. So that was my first aviation job in helicopter operations. I loved that because I was just spent my time looking after the helicopters, flying around. It was good fun. And then worked for the UK Cirrus aircraft dealership. And I got accepted into the Air Force at that point. But I was then involved in a crash. One of the Cirrus aircraft, yes, engine failure on takeoff. Not much you can do from sort of 200 feet. So in putting it into the field, I broke my back. So I walked away, but still I couldn't join the Air Force after that. So it was a career in civilian street. The airlines didn't appeal. I ended up going to work for Flightline down in Southend, a small airline primarily servicing the North Sea oil network. Yeah, quite a few jobs. I ended up doing ferry flying. I did quite a lot of ferry flying. Flew a King Air for a while as well. King Air, old E90 single pilots. Tried to leave aviation a few times and kept getting sucked back in again. But in 2016, I got invited to join Lux Aviation in the charter sales team. So, okay, great. So I joined a new team that was set up to manage charter sales for all of their group AOCs as one. So new concepts, new idea. And it was there that the idea actually for APC came about, because we had this very advanced ERP system that had been put together for managing flights. Not as good as Leon, of course, but a very, quite comprehensive custom ERP system.
I mean, you like saw something in the market that was your scope, like you.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I was doing is I was quoting maybe up many flights a day. We were getting sometimes over 1,000 quote requests in a day, mostly through Avonode. And well, the problem was always the lack of airport and handling costs. So you would see, you always had this like fixed cost estimate. I remember a CJ2 was like €600 per turnaround, but that doesn't factor in if it's a weekday, weekend, if it's evening, if number of passengers on board, doesn't factor in any services needed, anything at all. So it could be €50, it could be 5,000. It was, and the number of times we lost huge amounts of money was just staggering to me. And yeah, you could find this out. You could either look up the price list if it's available and work it out, or you could email the ground handler and say, hey, can you give me a quote for this itinerary, please? But A, you're wasting their time, and B, by the time you've got your response or run your calculations, you've lost the job to someone else. I was also a charter broker in the past, so I know that you as a broker, you're often up against other brokers too. So you want to be the one to get back to your client first. So if an operator responds first, quite often you're going to just grab that option, put it to them if it's suitable. So I knew from that you don't have time to do this in an operation, and that's where the idea for APC came about, was to create some way of doing this, some tool that could actually do this automatically. So every time a new request, new RFQ hits your inbox, it automatically calculates that for you. And so,
all right. So you noticed a lack of something for help to people that normally create quotes. I mean, the lack of time that they have, when they're competing through our other brokers, and the great problem with the communication from the airports, that they are not providing, or they're probably hiding some information, or they are a lot of not so pointed out. So to create some solution to provide the people that create codes with a software that creates it automatically in a matter of seconds. So I mean, you studied, you've done your homework, yeah?
Yeah, well, I had a little bit of a background in the past with software design. So I thought, okay, well, I can build this. I can design this. How hard can it be? Famous last words. Extremely is the answer I now know. 5 years down the line since I first started actually writing the code myself. A very crude basic version. So there's a lot to it.
So you've been a pilot. You work in the sales, and where did you learn to code? I mean, it's sounds like a man orchestra, yeah.
Well, no, I taught myself to code so I could write the first version of APC. That was the idea. I taught myself just basic PHP, so I could create this first version of the calculator, which was incredibly basic. But we're on version 4 now, I think.
Okay, so how long did you manage to learn PHP to like let's say produce the first like APC for I mean the calculator to set those two charges that you can normally go with on the quote from the airports, yeah?
So the first version I wrote was very, very basic, more of a proof of concept demonstrator. And that actually was what I used to get investment. But that took me maybe, I would say about a year. I basically, as soon as I started learning, as soon as I knew enough, I started building. It was like my training project, I suppose. APC version 1 was. But I was doing that whilst I was flying Eclipse jets at the time, freelance for Channel Jets. So during the first lockdown, quite a bit I would be somewhere, and I would down route, and I would just sit and code in between flights. And then after that, I actually started recruiting developers to work on it because my skills were not were not up to it. I realized that I've passed my I guess my brain is not quite wired to be a coder per se, but where my strength lies is in design. I can see how data should be most efficiently related. That's how my brain works. So I design it, and I basically pass the development team to go ahead and build now, basically.
So we got 1 year of learning to code to provide the first concept, and after a while you get like some developers to like manage your product after from that point, yeah, to
That's right.
create a product that you can sell to other like people, yeah. And it's from this point, it's how long do you started to first provide your first sell to clients?
Sure. Well, we were ready to go at the beginning or beginning of 2020, and we were going to launch APC at eBase in 2020. And then, of course, everything got cancelled because of the pandemic. So,
That's a happy beginning.
well, yeah. So it was like, but actually, it was a blessing in disguise because the system was quite immature at that point. It worked, but it was still missing some vital things like fire category upgrades and things like that. And also, we weren't yet at the critical mass for data. So APC's a brilliant system, but it needs data in there to make it work. We need airport and ground handling pricing. Airport pricing is quite easy to obtain, it's usually in the public domain. Ground handling usually is withheld, and you have to build that relationship with ground handlers. That takes time. So actually, it gave us time to establish these relationships, to develop the next version of the system, to really mature it, and to get our API ready. So we only really started to actually, I suppose, really market our services, the APC service, to customers was about this time last year, maybe in August last year, is when we really started to actually try to take on paying customers. And then, of course, we were working on integrations, which was the key to it, because we provide a user interface for APC. So customers can go on and just run one-off calculations if they want to, but it's not an efficient way of doing things. I know from having worked in charter sales, you need the API, and that's obviously what we've developed with yourselves. And that's exactly how I envisaged it in the working, was via just delivering calculation via API, and we're now at that stage.
So, like you said, like COVID was a blessing. I've like remember I get a like funny view because during before COVID I started to work in this huge company. It was a corporate company that provided business travel services, and I mean by business travel I mean providing normal commercial flights to for example some business costs travel for a huge corporation. So we normally buy the tickets by Sabre, by Amadeus, all the GDSs, all the smaller ones, even Apollo. We managed to like I was in the IT department, and I remember when somewhere 2 months the pandemic struck in Poland. It was a February. I remember. No, it was March, the 1st of March. And I remember that 2 months before that, we normally had flights. It was like, it was huge amounts of reservation. I mean, around 8,000 by our agents a day. And after somewhere in December, we started to look at the hotel availability in China. So we saw that everything was closing, and we said it looks very like scary, because first China was closing, then Spain was closing, and it was kind of scary. And then it struck in March, and it struck all over Europe, and it was something like pretty scary, because we started to see what remote work. We started to see that our agent who were like managing 8,000 reservation a day, they get like 3 a week. So I mean, in this sector, it was very depressing. And I remember that there were town halls where our CEO said, I've seen like the blow up of a volcano. I see the impact of 9/11 on the travel market, but I didn't see anything like this. And it was quite a huge. And I mean, what's your take on the COVID situation? How did you see it? Because you could saw it from a different perspective, as a pilot, as a someone who works with the business aviation. Yeah, and what was your like thoughts about it?
Yeah, well, I've had a very limited, I suppose, very limited perspective on it, because at that time I was flying freelance on the Eclipse jets, mostly for Channel Jets down in Guernsey. And so during that first lockdown, we started doing a lot of repatriation flights, but we were sometimes the only people on frequency. That was the strangest thing. Usually it'd be sometimes hard to get a word in edgeways. Back in 2019, I remember in the summer season, sometimes you to really sort of step on others just to get your calls in, especially over sort of northern Spain, sort of West France. One of the trips that I actually sent you screenshots of the FMS, we got a direct to from the northern coast of Spain all the way to destination Oxford, and we heard one other aircraft on frequency that whole way, which is just, it was eerie. Very, very strange. Also, the atmosphere of it. So all the flying we were doing were repatriations. So people who've been stuck in other countries and had usually flown into Frankfurt, actually. Somehow they ended up back in Frankfurt. So went to Frankfurt a lot to go and move people back to wherever they needed to get to. And it was a very somber atmosphere, I don't know, it was really peculiar. It was like a funeral, is the only way I can think to describe it. It was very, very strange. And yes, visiting Madrid, I won't try and pronounce that, Lima Echo Mike Delta, the main one. The first time I've been there, and again, only aircraft taxiing, everything parked up. So surreal, so unusual. And then not long after that, I got long COVID and stopped flying, so I can't say more. But yes, it was the impact, and actually as well, trying to get hold of people on the software side. So again, another silver lining for us was that a lot of people were getting made redundant, who we then picked up and recruited. A lot of very good, highly intelligent people. So obviously not good for them, not good for the industries, but it was an opportunity for us. So yeah, but really that was kind of my only scope, my only bit that I had visibility on within it. Everyone was on furlough as well. Quite often you go to places to find we could only use one particular handler because everyone's gone on furlough and put on furlough. So yeah, very, very strange time. And then by the time because it took me a few months to recover from this, by the time I'd recovered, everything was kind of not booming, but it was recovering. It was on the up again. So yeah, it was very odd.
Yeah, I've saw this tragedy, because we were seeing all those flights, and we saw all the hotels that were closing down, and it was quite a strange situation. I mean, after now I'm in Lyon, and I've talked with lots of persons, and they say that the impact is still visible. For example, with, like you said, with the ground handling services, because they were like heavily impacted by this COVID situation. And but there's also this situation that every tragedy like creates opportunity. So that the business travel, I mean the business private jet sector did manage to like grow in this situation. I mean, we saw a lot of a great increase of flights for private jet operators, and you probably also saw it on the market.
Yeah, like I say, it was we only had a very limited sort of view of it because not really involved with that many operators at that stage. But yeah, well, I just saw, like I say, from my own experience going around repatriating people, it was the only way to actually get people home, back to their home countries in a lot of cases. And of course, the light jet and turboprop markets, the most cost efficient for that. So those are the ones that we saw operating when we were out and about, certainly. But it was, yeah, I mean, we saw a lot of the larger types just all parked up, Globals and Gulfstreams during that time. Again, very peculiar to be the only aircraft operating at an international airport.
Yeah, could be like very, very, like you said, eerie. Yeah, and but like this situation also create a great challenge because with more people during that period that were using like private jet flights, that creates for a company that normally operates, for example, from Berlin to Paris with this only airport pairings that they are choosing for their normal flights. It created also this situation with someone like would travel to more remote places and different airport pairings. And this is something that was like a great thing for software like APC, because normally when you travel to an airport that you know, like for example, if I will go to a restaurant that I normally know, I know the prices. I go there for example 1 year, and I know that this dish will cost me, for example, 10 euros. And but there is a time when someone let's says to me like let's go somewhere else and try something new, yeah, and I don't know the prices. Yeah, and I mean, if it goes for a pizza or a kebab, and it's not a big deal. But if you like managing flights or selling flights, I mean, there can be a lot of money involved, and to be ahead of the situation, how do you like manage this situation in APC?
Well, yeah, just going back to my point before with my work experience, Lux Aviation, this is exactly why APC came about, because just in my personal opinion, this was the one area of charter quoting that was not really understood well, or not really quantified well at all. I mean, you talk about new pairs, of course, yes, lots of new destinations, or more demand, I should say, for destinations popping up, a variety of destinations. So as you say, operators don't know those so well. But I think in terms of how we actually manage that on our side, because obviously that increases the number of locations we have to cover. So firstly, what we've done is we've actually looked, when we were building our data set, we actually worked with WingX to understand where the business aviation traffic was traveling to, were the most popular destinations. So we started off like that, to hit the most popular destinations first, and then worked backwards. And we started covering Europe first as well, and targeting light jet and turboprop operators, primarily because it's an area that we know, being our home turf, but also that, just from my experience, the margin on some of those flights for the smaller aircraft can be, under €1,000, well under €1,000 at times for the whole trip, and you can lose that in one turnaround if you get it wrong. You can easily make a loss, and I was on quite a few loss-making flights. So I thought, yeah, this is something we need to protect against. This is our core markets, the ones who will really benefit from it most. So yeah, and then we could have branched out from there. We worked our way outwards. But now in APC, what we do is we let the customers tell us. We actually let them tell us, where do you operate to, and where do you want coverage, which handling brands do you use, who's your preferred handling partners. If we don't already partner with them, then we go off and we build that relationship. We get the data, so that we can provide them with, the most accurate cost estimates for their trips for any itinerary. So yeah, really customer demand these days is the primary driving factor.
So it's like more as tailoring something for the customer. I mean, making something very precise for their demands. If you want to travel to some region, we will check the prices and load it into APC. Yeah.
Yeah, but obviously we want to have as much coverage. In an ideal scenario, we would have the whole world covered with every single handling brand already, but it's not practical. It takes a very long time to build that. Again, building relationships is the main time consuming aspect here. But yeah, mainly it's just where our customers sort of decide where our data processing team looks, where they place their focus on acquiring and then processing this data. So like when we take on a new operator customer, before we take on the subscription, we ask, like, please send us a list of your most popular destinations, any that you foresee more traffic to in the near future, and your preferred handling brands. So then we work on those, we cross-check our coverage against that list, and then we say, okay, we don't have that one, so let's work on getting that. It's a very time-consuming exercise. There can be up to a 3-month lead time, just because it is very manual. I mean, even in this day and age of rapid AI advancement, we're still not at the point where AI can properly interpret a price list yet, because some of these are, it's like some sort of IQ test. I don't know. It's incredibly ambiguous. Take a look at, for example, Innsbruck's airport's price list. This is one we use for training. Data scattered all over the place. There's tables of data, but with using many different application methods of how pricing should be applied. And then you have lots of conditions in text hidden away underneath as well. So it requires a lot of concentration and a lot of eye for detail. There's no kind of standardized format. So yeah, I'd love the idea of having AI just reading all this data and processing it for us. But
do you have an example of such a hidden fees or interpretations?
Oh, Innsbruck Airport. Innsbruck Airport. Yeah, I can share that with you. Send that over to you just to give you I'm assuming this one hasn't because I don't get involved with the day-to-day data anymore. It's been a while. Okay.
So Innsbruck Airport is like a test for a new APC employee. Yeah.
It's one of the training. It's one of the training materials because it's just so horribly ambiguous. Another great one is Frankfurt Main LTO, but this is just standard LTO pricing. This landing takeoff cycle based on the nitrous oxide emissions of the aircraft, based on its from when it arrives on approach at 3,000 feet, the landings, taxiing in, to taxiing out, to take off, to climb out to 3,000 feet again. That's the LTO cycle. And they want to know about basic grams of nitrous oxide generated during that cycle. And actually, that's another area that we found. It's not just the fact that the airport and handling charges are not that well known, that people just assume, oh yeah, for a CJ2 it's going to cost you 600 euros for this turnaround. It's the fact that people don't understand the parameters of the aircraft, and that every aircraft is different. And there can be, within the same type, there can be many, many, many different factors that would vary the cost. Like, sorry, I'm digressing here, but it's all relevant. So, for example, if you take a King Air 200, my favorite example. So, if you just take within that King Air 200 series, you have, like the Classic 200, the 200C, the B200 Super King Air, 200C, the King Air 250. If you just take the Classic King Air 200, you have 48 variants within just that type, and those have different engine fits, which all have different nitrous oxide values. They have different. You have ICAO noise chapters, so chapter 6 or chapter 10, and like in Germany, for example, they charge differently. Those are addressed in different ways, but it's exactly the same aircraft, just certified differently. If you have a performance modification like Razorback, for example, changes the height at which the aircraft flies over the sensors, therefore different sound characteristics. You have the obvious one, max takeoff weight. A lot of people assume King Air's 5.7 tons or 12,500 pounds, but a lot of them there's a lot that are certified up to 6.4 tons. So obviously a different charging bracket, because quite often charges are applied sort of per 1,000 kilograms. So yeah, and then you get things like this, the nitrous oxide. And you look at that. If you looked at that, you think, oof, if you weren't familiar with it, you would
Okay,
think,
it's a quite huge calculation
Hmm.
formula, and as a someone who works in the sales, you're supposed to calculate by yourself
Yeah.
the whole formula. I mean, it's it sounds crazy.
Yeah, but see, we spent 9 months putting together the business aviation aircraft and engine database that covers every single value that applies to pricing for aircraft. So we take it from type down to what we call variant, which is every, let's say, combination of engine, noise chapter, max takeoff weight, max landing weight, any number of other things too. Actually, that's not the main one. There you go, schedule of charges. So this document is 57 pages long. So straight off the bat, it's like, ouch, that's a big one to look through. But look at the index. You'd think, okay, great, we've got charges here. Ground handling charges, that looks good. So pages 11 and down. So, oh, these are descriptions. It's not even fees. Okay. If we keep going, it's in here somewhere. Actually, I know exactly where it is, but I will, it's right at the bottom. You look at this and think, whoa, these are all basically the exact individual parts of each service. I mean, this is an extreme example, but there are quite a few price lists like this out there. Here we are. We're finally into fees. Okay, so for example, up to 4 tons max takeoff weight, you're charged basically per half ton, effectively. So within any aircraft within this band, you pay this per landing, and then it changes to that's just a clear for each 500 kilograms. This changes to actually more like bands. That's still straightforward. That's still straightforward enough. And then you have surcharge according to noise levels. These aren't standard noise levels. These are not ICAO defined noise levels. So you think, okay, there's obviously some other measuring. You look at that, you think, well, what does this mean? It's not noise chapter. But if we have a look, there's actually a table hiding around here. There we go. Here's another issue we come across. You see, you've got all these aircraft mentioned here, these types, but there are plenty of types that aren't mentioned. So you kind of have to think, where does this aircraft sit? Where does my aircraft sit in these classifications? You know, a great example as well. I don't think this is the case with Austria, but with the German price list, certainly, the Piaggio Avanti is very badly penalized. That one's up there with like the Antonov AN124 in its noise categories. So it's knowing things like that. For example, if you're operating a type like that, where am I going to get enormous costs, enormous surcharges because of noise? And it's becoming more and more prevalent. Noise and gaseous emissions are becoming, whereas before when we started out, it was mostly in Europe, it was mostly max takeoff weight based. Now noise and emissions are taking a bigger, more and more, price structures are changing, it seems, to focus on those items. I mean, here in the UK, for some reason, it's still max takeoff weight primarily, but in Europe, certainly, it's like Germany, France has been evolving recently to take a lot more focus on that.
And you get this challenge that you got a different airport pairing that you normally work on, and you're supposed to create quotation, and you faced with a large document with all these prices, and you get that done it for in 1 week or maybe 1 month, to calculate all that stuff.
Exactly.
And there's no standardization to help you. There's no standardization that every airport has a different pricings and a different format of those prices.
Correct. Exactly. There is no standardization whatsoever. It's a big mess. I mean, if we look at,
for example, let's look at the charges that are present in the Frankfurt Airport.
Yes. Here we go. Airport charges. Yeah, ground infrastructure.
So that's a second document. Yeah.
So this is the correct one this time. Yeah. So ensuring proficiency. So see, for example, we have landing and takeoff charges here. So effectively, what we call a movement fee. It costs. This one's more max takeoff weight based, as you see. but there are other factors. You've got some cargo here, for example, per cargo carried. Here we go, noise fees. So you see again, you've got a separate set of aircraft categories based on measured noise. Noise that's been measured at this airport. So again, it doesn't comply with any of the kind of the ICAO data. So we have to model this individually by type and then fill in the gaps again. But you see, you've got, for example, conditioned jets with max take weight less than 34 tons, unless they're otherwise specified, get hidden, basically come under the lowest category. But this is different for takeoff. This is this takeoff or landing? That's landing. See, and then this is the table of takeoff. Two different sets, takeoff and landing. And actually, if I can find it, there's the P180. So it'll be up there high somewhere.
Yeah, so that's an ideal example, because you already know that stuff, and you're looking for this stuff like for a few minutes, and that must be confusing for someone who doesn't fly at this to this airport.
Absolutely. I mean, again, so you've got all these different rates here, noise charges, depending on time of day as well. You see, these have got different time bands here. So it's 22, 2300 and 05 to 0600. Different times, you see. So it modifies. It's horrible. These are the worst ones to model as well. Again, we use this in training because this generates. It's about 2,600 rows of data to actually model this price list, because it is so. Oh yeah, we have other modifications here too about ICAO noise chapter 3 aircraft. Yeah, so it's yeah, it's kind of crazy really. Oh, noise rating index too as well. We have modifiers here too, but we have all this data. So the idea is that APC does this for you in a split second, as opposed to having to look through this and rack your brain trying to figure it all out and probably getting it wrong, most likely.
So it's like a quick call that you provide, like create a quote in Leon sales module, like use APC to get those prices and provide a quite close pricing for a flight. Like, tell me, because would you say it's like 100% correct?
We aim for 100% correct, but quite often the price list can be open to interpretation. This is the problem with them. We usually achieve greater than 99% on average. But what sometimes happens is that operators come to us after and say, "Hey, look, you got the cost wrong," and then we examine it. We do it because obviously we don't want to cost any. We don't lose anyone money at the end of the day. But we look at it and we compare it with the price list. We compare the aircraft's noise certificate, and we see right. And I think in all but one instance so far, we've got it right, and they've been billed wrong because the airports themselves, ground handlers, don't have the right data for the aircraft. They think a King has 5.7 tons. It's more or less. They have the wrong values for the aircraft set because there is no unified aircraft database out there. And what we've got here actually is a unified aircraft database with all the correct data, all the aircraft logs. Whenever we do the aircraft setup in APC on behalf of the customers. They send us the noise certificates, and we go ahead and we basically make sure we've got it matched the exact variant. So that if there is ever any discrepancies or any disagreements, we can say, look, this is how we calculated it. So yeah, it doesn't happen that often these days, but it's nice. It's always nice and reassuring to be able to come back and say, look, you've got it wrong. The ground handler's got it wrong. In actually quite a few cases, it's led to refunds for our customers when they've been overcharged incorrectly. So
you like pretty sure that you get the pricing right for a flight. I mean, to get all the noise fee, like ground handling fees and all that stuff that airport charges, for example, some taxi or stay at the airport. It's normally this price that is the charge, or very, very close to this price.
Yeah. The idea is to get it within 90% always, and we do pretty much manage that. Of course, there's the odd case where there is human error involved. At the end of the day, we are having humans interpreting ambiguous data. Well, data that is often ambiguous or long and complicated, as you can see from that price list. So So yeah, mistakes do get made occasionally. Of course they will, but no, we get there almost all the time. It's even when there is a mistake, it's usually still well within 90%. So
I'd say like when it's an occasion, like to make a deal, for example, with some airport pairings that are normally not your scope, then it's like to answer it with the solutions that provide you to lose like less money. Like to get it right. I mean, it will be harmful if you don't use such a software, and you will lose, for example, 10,000 euros, and it's not like harmful if you don't manage to get 100 euros more. For example, you will want to get little less money. It's you're like all in this situation. You're getting the money that you wanted for this flight. You like earn less money. Yeah. With the situation. So yeah, it's like a great example to create a dynamic pricing in a situation that you normally are not familiar with. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually another aspect to it is not just trying to safeguard revenue from like to stop you underpricing. It's also to stop you overpricing as well, because in a lot of cases, operators will, if they're not sure, they'll just stick on an extra 2, 3, 4,000 euros, however much. Well, I'm putting numbers out of the air there, but you know, they'll play it safe, but then their chances of actually winning that booking are very, you know, just drop proportionally, don't they? So we're actually helping them to. So sometimes we actually reduce pricing too. So we bring it up and down. And we look at both metrics in APC. So on the APC dashboard for our operators, we see how much revenue have we protected for you, i.e. when you've undercharged, but how much have we actually reduced what you would have charged by to ensure and that converted into a booking. Because that then we've actually helped you win that booking in theory. If it was on cost basis, of course, rather than just quality. But yeah, so I think we've provided some help there too. But also the other elements, just one that I've seen for myself, again, as a broker and operator, something that I really disliked as a broker was when you would get a quote for a flight you knew that was going to have out of hours charges involved. You know, late, like say 11 p.m. departure from Leeds Bradford is what I remember. So you know there's going to be out of hours, but the operator comes back and says subject to out of hours, because they don't have the time to pick up the phone and work it out. And you think, oh, trying to explain this to your end client, a high net worth individual who doesn't get it, or think, oh, we also need a fire category upgrade because the fire category is downgraded to this at that time. So the APC does all that for you. The idea is that you should never have to actually pick up the phone and find out what the out of hours fees are again, or what it costs to upgrade the aircraft. It automatically looks at, is the airport open? Is the ground handler open? At this time, no. Can it be opened? Yes or no? Yes, great. Okay, what fees are included? It looks at, okay, what fire category is available? Does for this particular aircraft? Does what's available meet it? No. Okay, can we upgrade it? Yes. What's the cost of that? So we look at those aspects too, not just the sort of the pure turnaround costs.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk like for example what the future holds, because I see like two factors here. One is I mean two threats for this idea. I mean, once the airports like started to talk with each other and set up some standardization for it, and I mean it's like less probably gonna happen, because if you get so many people, it's obvious they will not get to an agreement. And the other threat is like finally we're getting an AI that will like gather those data. I mean, is that something that you like see as something real?
So on the first point about everyone getting together, all the airports and providers getting together, well, even if they did, it would make no difference for us really, because it's the ground handling pricing that's hidden away in the background. And I know there's been a bit of a push for this in America with AOPA over there, trying to publish ground handling pricing, but they just publish bits of price lists rather than the whole thing. You still got to do the maths. I don't see such a thing happening here. One thing I've learned is the ground handling industry is very protective over their pricing data. And this is sort of where we come in. We provide them with a way of serving their customers without actually disclosing their price structures. That's a very sort of key part of our system, actually of our APC sister system, Handling Pricing Manager, which is just a free tool for ground handlers for managing this data. But even if they did, you would have to have some sort of tool, some sort of way of getting it out. So you'd have to integrate with Leon and the likes, other FMSs. It would still be quite inconvenient and costly to do for no real tangible benefit for them. So we are that bridge at the moment. I don't see that changing because I know other people have tried about competition. I won't name names, but I know that other companies have tried and claim to be able to calculate these, and they can't, not to any acceptable degree of accuracy. So I don't actually see any threat in that regard. And the second part, in terms of AI, I see them as an opportunity. So what we're looking at the moment is we're looking at ways of taking some of the more simple price lists and having the initial processing done by AI. So basically processing it into our database structure. And then, so we always go through a 3-stage review process. So this would be the initial import, and then we always have a peer review and a final acceptance review from a manager. I think in this case, we would have the initial processing done by AI perhaps, and then have the peer review and acceptance done by humans. We're not looking to replace our team, but it means we can grow our capacity to serve more locations, which is great. So that's how I see it going, at least in the interim. As I say, there's so many ambiguities with these price lists, this data, that it's very difficult to train a model to actually be able to interpret this. I had to play around with ChatGPT on this as well to see if I tried feeding it some price lists, and you can manipulate it, you can trick it too easily. I found, like I told, right, if I've got a Gulfstream 5 that's on this itinerary doing this, what would it cost me? It spit up numbers. I said, well, no, you got the max take weight wrong. It's this. No, the noise category is this. I feed it false information on purpose, and it would say, oh, sorry, yes, I got it wrong, which doesn't help. No backbone.
All right, so that was a little bit sci-fi, and when it goes to future, what's like the next plans for APC, and in the near future, what can we see, for example, in 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, so not so much with APC because it's there and it fulfills its purpose. I mean, we are currently rewriting the calculation engine to make it a lot faster. But beyond that, it's really a case of just expanding the coverage that we serve. So it's continuing doing what we're doing now, just growing our coverage, building our relationships with ground handlers. And we're really gaining traction actually in the last few months at eBase. Yeah, there's been some amazing brands coming on board. I've been really pleased to see. But in terms of the company itself, complementary products. So we've been looking at this, working on this AVOS concept, this aviation operations software concept, which is designed to replace our HPM tool. But what this will be is effectively a ground operations software to run a mini ERP system, I suppose, to run operations for ground handlers, interplane agents, because we're quite heavily involved in fuel now as well, but that's kind of a separate thing, and also for airports themselves. So you talked about airports all getting together, and there's lack of standardization. What I hope over the next 2 to 3 years is that when we do release this tool in probably about a year's time, we'll actually have a tool here that airports can use to manage their data, to manage requests coming in from these other modules. And that will become the standard, I hope. That's what we aim for. That will become the central standard. So rather than having to go out and get this data, manually process it in different formats, it'll be fed to us. That's that would be the ideal. It's the ideal end result. But we'll see. That's
okay. So Adrian Parsons and IDS on the mission to gather a whole airport data from all over the world.